Right, welcome to my channel. My name's Philip. I'm pushing 40 and have been living now in Sweden for over 10 years. Originally, I'm from Poland, so on this channel I talk, well, a lot of self-improvement, minimalism, but also talk about my journey, uh, how I sort of moved to Sweden. So I touch upon also a lot of cultural aspects of life in general. And right, in today's video, I'll focus on sort of going through five arguments or reasons why I believe you shouldn't move abroad, or one should not move abroad, or at least consider those aspects, whether they would be really too huge to ignore while moving abroad. Because, there's a lot of buzz about, and have been, about moving abroad, this nomadic lifestyle, like being a digital nomad, right? All the perks, and like it's beautiful, you explore, you learn a lot, you expose yourself to different cultures, therefore you become probably a richer person, as in like figuratively, right? More interesting, and you learn also other perspectives upon life and so on and so forth, which, yeah, all things considered, this can be, well, true, obviously. But in today's videos we sort of focus on this aspect of that grass is not always greener on the other side, right? So there's more to it, moving abroad. Some of the aspects may be really sort of, yeah, too huge for a person to ignore, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Right, let's jump right into it. The first reason why I think, right, why why not to live or move abroad is the cultural one. Yeah, I also already mentioned the sort of overpowering role that culture plays in our lives, right? It's sort of unspoken part, because we don't really think about it so consciously, until we do, right? And until it does play a great role, actually, until we realize how much of a big deal culture is in our lives. So I put, I glance sort of at my notes. That's how I always roll, so cultural shock may prove too much. That's sort of my first aspect, because, again, depending on how long you've lived in your country, and a lot, and probably slightly also dependent on what sort of personality you have, if you're extroverted, if you're more risk taker, and so on. And again, depending on your age and how long you've lived in your country, it may be very difficult to get accustomed a new country. Again, it depends on what country you move into, right? So the cultural shock may be a bit bigger or a bit smaller if you, let's say, move from United States to Australia, right? So again, same language and probably similar cultures, but still different. But if you move, I say, from Slovakia to, I don't know, China, right? So the cultures are extremely dissimilar. So again, I suppose, well, but it sort of goes hand in hand, because the greater the differences, the more opportunity to learn, also more and different perspectives and so on, can be very stimulating. But here I focus on that the cultural shock may prove too much, right? At the beginning, maybe a bit thrilling, but then after a while, after a few months maybe, or even years, you may realize, God, I miss all those little things of my mother, of my motherland, right? Say dishes, and the way people talk, and the way people greet each other, how they are, sorry, how they are maintaining the eye contact or not, and so on. Those aspects of communication, and all aspects that make you feel at home, comfortable, because you're used to them, or at least you were, right? But you were sort of oblivious to them, because we take culture for granted in our motherland, sorry. So the first thing is a really huge cultural shock. Sort of, how much tolerance do you believe you have for the new culture, right? Right, so I would recommend not moving abroad because of how used to we are and how comfortable we feel and how big of a part culture plays in our lives. It makes us who we are to an extent, right? There's other aspects as well, but culture is huge. Number two, the second reason why I believe you should not live abroad, right? Uh, you're away from your family. That's an obvious one. And again, it depends on what sort of relation you have with your family. But whether it's very close one or a bit more distant, like giving my own example, my personal example, I never felt so close to, like extremely close to my family. And I also lived abroad before I moved to Sweden. So sort of it was in a way incremental move for me, but I've been away for the longest here in Sweden, right, over 10 years. So I miss my family, right? Here's again, um, it's just a feeling you have, or I have, and I believe that for some people it may be too huge a miss. It may not be worth it. Again, depends where you depends on why you're moving abroad, but sort of weighing in all the options, the culture shock, and now missing your family, emotionally, but also even the support in an everyday, on an everyday basis, right? Say, I don't know, you just need to talk to someone, or you know that family always will have your back, or at least they should, right? It's blood bond, so. So you sort of lose that part, or perhaps you decide to have children, and normally it's very often that your parents sort of can babysit every now and then, or perhaps if they're retired quite often. But this is sort of off the table if you move abroad, and it's a huge part, a huge thing. So let's go to number three. The third reason why I think you should not live abroad is um, well, it's sort of linked to the first one because I mentioned how sort of culture, or how huge a role it plays in our in sort of comprising who we are. So the third one is identity crisis, right? Because you may or may not, but I believe that there is every likelihood that you will sort of experience identity crisis, like this feeling of longing to belong to a culture, to a community, to a country, but you sort of will feel lost because depending on how long you've been living to the in your target country, so to speak, you may not feel connected to it yet, and at the same time, perhaps you're starting to feel like you're losing connection, right? This emotional one. To your motherland. So you may experience this identity crisis. Where do I belong, right? Who am I now? Because sort of we as humans play so many roles, right? Friend, father, mother, partner, I don't know, employee, right? Good person, bad person, right? Driver, you name it, right? But a huge part of our identity. So again, culture linked to the country where we were brought up, and again, subconsciously feel connected to, and consciously too. So again, you may experience, and it may be too much, and it's not worth it. Perhaps in many cases, you take care, or actually um, cherish and respect your own identity, who you are. It's a bit of a probably a bigger topic. I may make a whole different video just on sort of identity, roles, identities, and the importance of having your own identity clear and so on in your life. But again, moving abroad may mess it up quite hugely, right? A fourth reason why I believe you should not live abroad is you may feel like an outsider, right? It can be especially true when moving to certain countries. Like I've never moved or lived in Japan or Korea and other Asian countries, but I've heard that that it's almost next to impossible to be considered like one of them, one of the locals. But it may hold true to to a great number of other countries where you sort of whether it's true or not, you may feel like you're not really part of this country, of this community, because again you may be struggling for different reasons to learn those little aspects of culture. And even if you do succeed, perhaps you don't succeed, or obviously it's unlikely you succeed to the extent that is near or almost identical to the locals, right? With all those communication behaviors and the way you speak, dress, and so on, behave in general, right? So, and perhaps you will feel like you're an outsider. It is linked again to culture and identity, but this feeling, I wanted to put it as a separate one, like feeling like you're not one of those people around you. And again, I think it's one of those, it is one of those basic needs by Maslow, right? The hierarchy of needs, the need to belong. It's one of those basic needs. While once you've satisfied the need for food, shelter, then sort of next in line will be the need to belong, to be part of something bigger. And it may be difficult to attain that while living abroad. Not to say impossible, right? The fifth and last reason why I believe you should not live abroad is you may need to start from scratch, right? And sort of you can interpret it in any way you want, but what I mean by that is perhaps, let's say you studied in your home country, you put aside money, but now you're moving to a different country where perhaps life is much more expensive. So suddenly your life savings are not worth as much when you moved here. Or perhaps all those years you studied at the university, or perhaps gained experience in a field in your home country, perhaps it's not recognized in the same extent or not at all in the country, in your target country where you've moved. And again, this means that you have to start perhaps from scratch, or at least take a few steps back, which may take you back a few years. This may or may not be important, but I strongly believe that time is the most precious of commodities in our life, right? Especially time. I believe perhaps we should take that into consideration and respect that, and that's why I believe that this is the fifth reason why you should not move abroad, don't live abroad, because again, you may need to take a few years back and sort of restart your life. Sometimes it may be sort of even sought after, depending on what you're looking for in your life, like starting over, maybe easier abroad. But from this perspective, in general, I believe it's a negative thing, right? Again, depending on which country you're moving to. So in some countries, European Union, for example, so it's a bit easier to sort of get your education validated, right? But not always and not in the same extent. But perhaps moving to like I don't know, different continent, it may be even more challenging than that, right? That's it when it comes to my 5 reasons why I believe you should not live abroad. Right. Obviously, you've subscribed by now. Cheers for that. And I'm joking, but consider subscribing if you feel like this sort of content is to your liking, and you enjoyed it in any way, or hopefully it also made you, I don't know, perhaps your life a bit richer, right, in any way, hopefully. And yeah, consider subscribing, like if you liked the video, comment if you've got anything to say to me. I'll always gladly answer any questions or and so on. Right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your precious time, the most precious of commodities. And hopefully I'll talk to you soon, right? Bye bye.